should be able to have your group rights available to you as a system admin. And this is really all in a nutshell. If you don't have certain group rights toggled on the settings on the left-hand panel will not be visible. They will also not be accessible without any groups assigned to those settings. As a system admin, you will by default have access to the group rights under settings, and you will then be able to choose what you have access to, what those other groups have access to, and so forth. It's going to be important also that when you are setting up these group rights, that you don't give all access to everybody, because if you do, what could potentially happen is people will start to get a little curious and they'll go in to your settings, and they could potentially require certain fields, or hide certain fields that you required, and that could potentially cause some issues when you're creating as well as accessing other settings. Just again, quick overview here. So you will see that each section has the section name plus the word access. That will simply allow them to see the setting here on the left panel. It's, again, very important. Choose the correct people that have access to that. One of the, kind of skipping down here, one of the big ones that you want to make sure that all users do have access to is your dashboard access. This dashboard access, if the groups do not have access to it, when they log into WeOpportunity, they will not be able to see anything. They'll log in and they'll actually get an error because they do need to get access to that dashboard. So this is the first thing that shows up. This is what they need to see. Next thing here is, your global schedule. What's nice about the global schedule is having the ability to share your calendar amongst your colleagues via this global schedule icon here on the top left corner. This My Employees under that global schedule will allow you the ability to see specific employees that you're sharing your calendar with, that are sharing their calendar with you. Then you have here the import utility, which is, sorry, my internet is a little slow here. This is your My Employees. So under My Employees, you get to choose the users that you might want to see their calendars with. Going back to group rights here, one really nice tool that we have here is the import utility. What this is, if you don't already know, is you have the ability to bulk import leads as well as contacts and customers, and with a minimum requirement of certain pieces of data for it to import. What's nice about it is that you're able to do this bulk import and not have to do this double entry in case you do this import plus maybe have created some separately manually. All right. Next thing here is your lead management. What this lead management, what's going to be important here is there's a few things. First, let's make sure that in your opportunities that you're requiring certain fields, because maybe this data that you'd want to capture, whether it's for your marketing or for your sales team, like for instance, the sale amount, that might be important to some of you because you want to track quotas. And maybe the manager of your sales team wants to make sure that they're hitting their quotas or they're working towards their quotas. Another thing here is your location field requirements. It's going to be very important that there is an address, city, state, and zip code requirement. And the reason why I mentioned that being very important is that when you create a lead and you RFQ it or request for quote it, and it goes into WeEstimate, this combination of the city, state, and zip code could potentially drive your tax percent. So it's going to be very important that this is filled properly. Also, just noting the city it's best practice to enter the city as a full name. So instead of, let's say, North White Plains, if they put in N White Plains, it will not trigger the taxes because our taxes are driven by the full city. That's just a little side note. Next thing here is your required RFQ fields. Think of this RFQ field as the new project screen in WeEstimate. So you want to make sure that these are also aligning with what you're requiring in WeEstimate upon creating an estimate. All right. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions? All right. I think we're looking good so far. All right, great. So moving on here, the next set here is our opportunity, our sold fields. This sold field, or this sold, the ability to flag a lead as sold is useful for those of you that maybe have used something else prior to the WeSuite applications, but you do want to capture the data that you have sold to make sure that you have the dollar amounts that are actually all adding up for your quarters, right? So this is also the sold field is also only available as a group right. So similar to what all of these fields are, or all of these settings are on the left-hand side, the sold field is part of a dropdown. So if you don't allow for anybody to flag a lead as sold, you want to make sure that all of the groups don't have that ability to have access to it. Next thing here is in lead management. I'm kind of going up this list here. So you have the ability to assign leads by office, to past groups, and to individual salespeople. These three tabs, and even though you guys didn't hear me earlier, would be shown here in your lead management on the right hand panel here. Okay. And then again, here's our lead management access. You want to make sure that access is available. Okay. So I'm gonna allow for you guys I'll give you guys some time separately to look at all of these selections. But this is going to be important to make sure that you create the appropriate groups to then assign these rights to. All right. Does anybody have any questions there so far? All righty. So let's move on here. Just moving forward here. All right. So next thing here in our group rights, here is your system. This is the one that's really going to be very important. Again, here's your group rights. We want to make sure best practice for group rights, groups, data points and data lists, the office settings, user settings. And those are very big things that you should only have system admins have access to. And again, the reason why is you can have people get very curious and they start going in there and making changes to your settings, and then people get locked out of the application as well. So that's something that we want to make sure that only a few people have their hands on to prevent any confusion or issues. All right. So now moving along here, so we'll go right now. What we're going to do is we're going to move into this next topic here, which is going to create a questionnaire. All right. what I'll do is going to be a very quick explanation to it, but questionnaires, what the intention of questionnaires are, is for you as a system admin to configure questions that could potentially lead whoever's taking in a lead to gather some data to then pass on to the salesperson, especially in the event that the person that's taking the lead doesn't necessarily own the lead, or they're just trying to gather more data because maybe they're assisting a salesperson. Okay, and it's a good way to take note of what the customer needs and wants. Okay, so I'm going to go here on the left panel here. Just let this load here. So as you can see here, we've created a few of them, a few questionnaires already. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click Add New Record, and I'm just going to say New Commercial. Okay, and I'll hit Update there, and from here, oops, I edited the wrong one. So under here, under the questionnaire that I create, I then expand on the left-hand side. And what I'll do is now I want to add some questions. So add new record, and what I can start asking, what is the square footage of the property, right? And we just continue writing on these here. New or existing system. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just show you what this is going to look like, or what this questionnaire would display as. So I'm going to go into a lead here. And I apologize for any slowness. So under here, when you first create the lead in the Op Info tab, you'll see here there is a drop down that when you're creating a lead for passing, this questionnaire drop down is available. And when you drop it down, you get to choose from any of the questionnaires that are flagged as active. All right. And then from there, as you can see here, they are just plain text answers. So they could be yes or no, 1,500 square feet, things like that. Do you currently have a home security? No. So things like that. It's a text field. There isn't currently a way for us to move this into a task or into your notes, but at the very least, it is in your lead for you to refer back to. So once you have that completed, just save the lead and it'll always show up there. Right. All right. So next and last thing, and this is a very short webinar, it seems. And it looks like no one really has any other questions. Should I give you guys a little bit of time to ask your questions? Anything in particular that you'd like me to go through? All right. Okay. So last thing here. So there's two more things that I do want to go through, and it's going to be creating of groups and also creating users to then add to those groups, which will then give you the ability to do some group settings. So first and foremost, when you are doing your configurations, you want to make sure that you create your groups And again, you're naming groups. The best thing to do is when you're naming your groups, you want to name them in such a way where you want to separate the access, the type of access that they have. Keeping in mind that when you create a group, users can be added to multiple groups at the same time. They don't necessarily have to be stuck in one group. So a system admin can also be a salesperson and can also be an approver and an engineer. Whereas an engineer may only be an engineer. They literally just create estimates and maybe they don't have access at all to WeOpportunity because they're not creating leads. Whereas the sales team, they can have access to creating leads and building estimates, but they're maybe not part of the accounting team who can actually do accounting exports into any of your accounting systems. Okay. Again, each group is allowed, you know, to have multiple group rights as well, but try to tailor those group rights to their role in the company. Because if they're considered a system admin, then they should be under the admin group, not just the accounting group, for instance. So creating a new group from within WeOpportunity is clicking new record, and let's say approval group, and we'll just say commercial. Okay. And from there, you will see them. So it'll show up here at the bottom. You'll notice here that the order is in the order of which you added the group. So the latest would be at the bottom. And when I go into group rights, let's say I do want my approval group to also have the ability to create a new opportunity. I go in here, I create it, and I go make sure that we select it and click save. All right. Next thing here is making sure that we have users in there. So under user settings, you can then create those users and assign them to whatever groups are listed here. So here's your user settings. And we'll create a new user. There we go. And all right. And then the next thing what we'll do is we want to make sure, first of all, we put in this email. Okay. We put on a username. And this is a similar setup to what we have in WeEstimate. But it does look a little different, right? It just looks a little bit like a light version because there's only so much that you could fit in one screen. So we'll go in here. All right. So now the next thing we want to do is for this user here, we want to make sure we hit edits. Oh, let's see, where's this user? But not enable. Okay, interesting. It didn't. Oh, here it is. Save. There we are. Okay. So now if I look for Michelle, here she is. We want to make sure that she has access to certain groups. So we click edit and make sure that she is assigned the correct groups that she has access to. Okay, we hit save. And then under People Manager, if you don't already know, the People Manager tab will allow for this user that you're editing to have either visibility of the user, the other users' leads, the ability to also pass a lead or allow them to search for a lead. These two are, well, sorry, this last one is actually happens to be a newer feature. This goes in conjunction with WeSuite Go. So in WeSuite Go, when you are searching for a lead in previous versions, any lead was searchable. Whereas now, if I restrict certain people's leads from being searchable, for instance, if I make sure that Alexandra is unchecked here, that means that Michelle cannot search for Alexandra's leads and find her leads and then potentially change or take the lead, right? This is also the same place where you can assign where the user can pass the lead. So again, from the lead management tab, making sure that that is unchecked checked will show or hide the salespeople in this list right here. All right. Do we have any questions so far? No? Doesn't look like it. All right. All right. Next thing here. So after you set up their people manager, another thing that we want to make sure so the user has access to applications is on the tab all the way to the rightmost is the applications tab. And that will allow for that user to have access to these specific applications. So for instance, if they don't have WeOpportunity checked, then they will not be able to log in. So let me just see if I can log in. I do. So it'll throw an error like this, because that means that I don't have the correct credentials to log in. All right. So I'm just gonna continue moving on. There's a few other things that I can share since we do have the time. So here under settings, just kind of going back here under settings, I think there's some important data that can be gathered that are specific to customers. And those would be considered data points. You'll notice here when I logged in, I have this view called the account dashboard view. And within this account dashboard, we have the ability to see customer details. And that looks like it's taking a little bit to load. So from within this this window, once it does eventually load, there are some fields that we can pull in. So for instance, maybe the salesperson, the manager, if you want to gather some notes on a customer to say, hey, you know what, the person loves baseball. So whenever it's the contact's birthday, your main contact's birthday, the president's birthday, you'll send them over a baseball cap or some tickets to a baseball game, just to kind of keep that relationship nice and warm, right? Another thing is with the data that you can pull, if you have someone in-house that's basically a SQL expert, you can gather data and put in data points that can be pulled from a SQL setup here, SQL results. And let me see here if we can get that going here. Let's see here. So under data sources, so for instance, if we have a data source here that we are connecting to, and we can bring in, let's see. So if you had one of these here, the from Sedona, let's say, one of the accounting systems that we integrate with, if you wanted to pull data from them because you wanted an old RMR or like the total RMR that they're currently paying, you can pull that data from here. So as you can see here, here's a select statement that was written up, right? This is all coming from Sedona tables and that we can validate. And once we validate and we create that SQL, we can then attach it to a data point that we gather under total RMR, which would then show up here eventually if this loads. Here we are. So you'll notice here, see total RMR here. And again, you can gather some data here, like with the website, the customer since, accounting data, and so on. All right. So if we wanted to edit that, we see account manager, shell, associations, the website, okay. How many offices, number of employees. So these are all data points that could be useful when you are managing an account as well. All right. Does anybody have any questions about the data points? All right. So I see someone had a question about the difference between managed user and managed. So manage, here, let me just bring this up here. So the difference between managed user and managed is managed actually is associated to commissions. Managed and splits are associated to the commissions module. The managed feature allows you to manage a person, and you as a manager could potentially have commissions generate to you because your team member generated commission. Okay. Whereas managed user, this is what allows you to see your employees under your My Employees. Here. All right. Anybody else have any questions on that? Did I go too fast? Is there anything that you'd like me to repeat? Be happy to continue with answering any of your other questions. All right. Well, I guess, I do see the attendees all have pretty much been on, utilizing WeOpportunity for some time already. So it's probably more of a refresher on some things that you haven't seen. But what we'll do is if there's any further questions that maybe you'd like me to answer and or if there's any support questions, feel free to email us in support at wesupport@wesuite.com. Or again, feel free to go into our website, wesuite.com, and then go into your education area, and there is some knowledge base articles that we're constantly updating and adding. All right. So it looks like this concludes our webinar here. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you got to learn some good information, maybe something new. Um, and hopefully, if there's any other questions that come up, that you'll contact us. All right. If you need to refer to the webinar again, it will be posted on the website by the end of the week under the education trainings webinars selection. And don't forget to mark your calendars for our other upcoming webinars. Next week is Tuesday, January 28th. We will be doing the user webinar covering the Opportunity 101 for your sales team. So please make sure to get them registered and connected. And then next month's webinars will be the system admin webinar on how to configure WeOpportunity groups, rights, and data lists. So I kind of gave you a little bit of an intro to that today, and that's going to be on February 11th. That's Tuesday, February 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then the following one will be on February 18th, which is also a Tuesday, the sales user webinar featuring the latest features and a demo of Quote Anywhere and the site survey. That'll be a really fun one. That will also be held at 1 p.m. Eastern. All right. Well, thank you very much all for joining the webinar, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.